Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank y'all for coming. Again, my name is Weston Martinez, and I am a San Antonio, Bexar County resident, Texas Republican leader, and a former Texas real estate commissioner, certainly concerned citizen, and I've been fighting voter fraud for over a decade here in San Antonio and across the state of Texas and elsewhere. In 2012, we received a stack of absentee ballots, whereby which all those absentee ballots had the same return address of a cemetery on the south side of Bexar County on Roland Avenue. At the time, it was shocking to me that an individual would be so brazen as to fill out all of the absentee ballots by hand by the same person, then also fill those absentee ballots out using a cemetery of an address. It was poetic and disgusting all at the same time. Upon that, we worked very hard with other people in Bexar County to actually fight voter fraud, creating the concept of the idea for a voter fraud bill, voter poaching bill, that increased the penalty for voter fraud up to a felony 1. We made great strides in the middle of session to start a bill and get it forward, and it ended by dying on the House floor the last vote needed before going to the governor's chair for signature. Today, what we want to talk about is what is going on in Bexar County. Arrests were made by the Texas Attorney General yesterday by a local resident, Raquel Rodriguez, and the report that was just released says she is still in custody in the Kendall County Jail. We want to thank Project Veritas, who is a group that came down and investigated this information. We want to thank the Texas Attorney General for their work in doing this, and we want to thank the public for making this possible by bringing in countless tips to let people know what's taking place. We want the media and the world to know that voter fraud is going to be rooted out, and this marks only the beginning of what we were doing to take a stand against voter fraud. The individual in question, as was put out by her own admission, was working for Republicans and Democrats. We know that on those different teams, there were different individuals that were working in conjunction with them. Go down the list, you've got several judges, you've got Greg Brockhouse, you've got other individuals that were associated with this individual that's now arrested. And we want to get to the bottom of what took place, because for those people tuning in, by this person's own admission on hidden camera that has now been reviewed by the Attorney General's office, she and her team successfully created voter fraud on somewhere between, it's our opinion, somewhere between 50 and 80,000 votes. Ladies and gentlemen, that is enough to swing any race in the state of Texas, particularly in the down races. That would have flipped a congressional race, that would have flipped a county commissioner's race, that would have flipped a mayor's race, and that would have flipped a county judge's race. It also would have helped to get different ballot measures passed. We also know by our own work that this individual was working in places like Laredo, the Valley, Houston. And so because we know law enforcement is limited, as has been the case in our country, the citizens are going to rise up to resolve things for themselves. And at the end of this press conference, we will let you know of the creation of the Voter Fraud Bureau of Investigation that has been created in response to this proven voter fraud that we have here in Bexar County. Its mission and focus will be to root out voter fraud at all levels across the United States of America, starting obviously here in San Antonio and in Bexar County, where it's clear that voter fraud is rampant. The other thing that we want to highlight is that in Bexar County, when you have an election going on, there are many things that need to be considered, not just who's voting, but how those votes are being collected. We know from firsthand from talking to individuals that the voting machines that are being used here in Bexar County, it seems like those voting machines, per state law, they're supposed to be zeroed out before the election day starts. We have received information that says those voting machines are zeroed out 5 days before the election day starts, and then they're sitting there for 5 days, allowed time to be tampered with, allowed time for someone to come in and do something. We also know that there is not a solid chain of custody as the Secretary of State and as the Texas Government Code allows for, and we know that the chain of custody for the thumb drives that are used on these particular voting machines are, again, not secure to the point that they are supposed to be. As we look forward to what's happened in Bexar County, we need individuals to know that we should all be vigilant. This is not a Republican or Democrat issue. Regardless of what party you are affiliated with, regardless of your zip code, voter fraud can happen to you. It can happen to your neighbors, and we have to all work together. That's why with our own team, if you are a member of the public and you have information related to voter fraud, we want you to contact us at the Voter Fraud Bureau of Investigation to let us know what is taking place. I will tell you, based on what we have found, no tip is too small and no tip is too large for us to help find voter fraud and to help root it out. I will tell you that Project Veritas came in and judiciously looked for what was going on. It was great to help those individuals that are professionals that have worked in other areas and have gotten a lot of information to help get this arrest to take place. We know that the individual that is arrested is currently being represented by Nico LaHood, former district attorney. We have questions about that. We wish that we just have questions about that in general. Myself personally, I'd like to know who's paying for Nico to represent this particular lady and what's happening there. I will tell you that we on an individual basis are combing through all of the election reports to see who all this individual, Ms. Rodriguez, and those individuals around her, who all they've been working for, so that information can be collected and given to the law enforcement authorities. As we move forward with our next elections, when the city comes up, I can tell you it would not take a very hard search for reporters to go look at the individuals that have been hired that have used this particular individual and her team. In Bexar County alone, we have people in the city, in San Antonio City Council, we have people at the Commissioner's Court, we have people in the Constable's Office, we have people that are in state representatives in the Texas House, and also in other levels of government. So this is not a small event. This is merely the tip of the iceberg. And if you have any information, and if you love this country, and you want fair and honest elections, please contact myself or contact the Texas Attorney General, the Texas Secretary of State, or Project Veritas at their number. You can follow all my social media venues at Weston Martinez, where I will list all those phone numbers for you and anyone that is needed. At this time, we'd be glad to take some questions before we give our closing remarks.
What race in particular was she trying to sway?
So by her own admission, she said that she was working on a district court race, on a congressional race, and also on a Texas Senate race, and also on a Texas House race this particular cycle. For those of y'all that are watching, again, the elections are different times of the year, and the reports are filed for each election. So we are asking the public, and our team is working through all of those reports to find out just how many races was she involved with. But again, our enumeration, based on her words out of her mouth on hidden camera, is that her team seems to be responsible for somewhere between 50,000 and 80,000 votes.
As you said, she wasn't working for any side. So What in your mind do you think she was trying to do?
Well, she was working for Republicans and Democrats. She gave some information where in one race where she was retained by a Republican, she was actually getting votes for Democrats by doing that. So until this individual gives their testimony, I think some of that is left up to opinion on our part, but it's very clear that she was getting paid to perform a service, and that she was performing that service in a means that was not legal, hence the arrest by the highest law enforcement authority at the state level in the state of Texas.
What would you say about the timeliness in which Ken Paxton was able to make an arrest on this?
I would say the timeliness, while it may feel like it is a long period of time, my experience fighting voter fraud for nearly a decade, this is record time in what we've seen take place. One of the other individuals that mentioned me by name on the undercover video, her name is Joanne Ramon, and she was the person that owned that cemetery from 2012. And she mentioned me by name and how she was questioned by the Attorney General because of a complaint that I filed against her back then. When we look at this, that went on for several years. She was not convicted by the Texas Attorney General for voter fraud and ballot harvesting, but she did receive a fine for not keeping up the cemetery that she was given charge over, and ultimately she was removed from that custodianship of that cemetery. So just to give you a previous situation where I was firsthand directly involved in filing a complaint with the Secretary of State and the Attorney General's office, and now this one where we were involved in letting people know where the voter fraud lied, and they went and found it to their credit. This is record fast, but there's got to be more out there, unfortunately.
And I know you probably already touched on this. What position in office do you hold?
Currently, I do not hold any position. I am former Texas Real Estate Commissioner, which is a statewide commission position that I held. I was appointed by then Governor Perry, served under Governor Abbott, and was confirmed by the Texas Senate. So that is the statewide office that I held previously.
Okay. Let me see what
and I was elected member of the Republican Party of Texas, and currently hold some positions with the RNC and the RNHA and their social media network. Yes, sir.
How long have you actually been involved in it? And personally, how are you actually entangled in it? Do you think Nico the Hood has actually used this lady before in the past?
My understanding is that Nico has used this lady before as a supplier. So I guess the conflict of interest time period must have lapsed. And fighting voter fraud, we've been fighting it since the first time we found out about it in 2012.
So what's your actual position?
My position is that several things are happening out at today's events. One, we've created the Voter Fraud Bureau of Investigation. It's a brand new organization. And two, we are reviving our voter fraud bill at the legislature. And three, from a congressional perspective, we want Congress to pass a law, federally and state, that says anyone that is involved in any kind of voter fraud can never serve in public office again. And they cannot even have anything to do with working on a campaign at all whatsoever. In other professions, if you do something that is harmful to the public, you can be banned from, for example, trading. You can be banned for providing trading information in the future. You can lose your license and lose your ability to work in that environment. We should require nothing less for this environment, which maintains the integrity of our country and the soul of our future. And that is something I think that congressional candidates, Republicans and Democrats, should get along at. In fact, I'm going to personally call Joaquin Castro's office today and see if he'll sign on with that, along with Congressman Chip Roy.
Where do you stand on this personally? Were you a victim of this voter fraud?
I know that I was told that I was a victim of voter fraud. We've been waiting there's been some evidence that's come out. I mentioned in a press conference unrelated to me after my county commissioner's race here in Bexar County that there were whistleblowers and that those whistleblowers should come forward. and they should speak the truth regardless of how it impacted the outcome of an election. And County Commissioner Tommy Calvert Jr., who is a Democrat, produced a letter to County Judge Nelson Wolff where he said he spoke to the whistleblowers, plural. He penned a letter to the county judge stating that he was concerned about the election, that we needed to recount or revote, and Judge Wolff responded to him saying he was fine with the results and didn't see a problem with it at all. Ladies and gentlemen, when you've got people that are on the opposite sides of the aisle that are both saying that there's a problem, we as a citizenry need to unite and realize that this is something that impacts everybody, and we have to work together to stop this from happening in the future.
Are you currently working with any state representatives right now making new legislation? Right now making new legislation?
I have been in contact with some state representatives and also some folks in the Senate on creating a hybrid version of legislation. We were waiting for the session to start only because we knew it was going to be jam-packed with COVID-related items, and so we wanted to see where the shooting lanes were to either amend a bill or add a tag-along bill or create a new one. Again, last time we created a new bill 4 weeks into the session, and we got it all the way through calendars, through committee, through the Senate, and to the final vote in the House, where it died on the third reading, all in less than 65 days, which is, I mean, it's like having a baby in, 2 months. It just doesn't happen. Yes, sir.
This Federal Bureau of Elections, is it only established in Bexar County right now, or any other place?
No, we actually have been talking to people in different parts of the country that would like to be formal board members as a part of that. We are working through the incorporating documents to have that set up. We know that there are people that would like to donate to something like that is a public policy oriented think tank that is just committed to fair and honest elections, and it is something that we know a lot of people would like to be involved in. Again, the page is set up on Facebook. People can do that. They can reach out to me directly, and then we'll have other means of getting a hold of us or making a donation that will come up in the future.
How do you feel this plays into the president's remarks about voter fraud?
I think that it proves that there is voter fraud, and that it can happen, it did happen, it does happen. And again, regardless of whether you voted for Trump or not, I did, we should all want, the proper legal votes to count, and we should not want any additional votes to count. I played high school football in Texas. When the whistle stops, nobody gets to make any other plays, nobody gets to score any other points, and the referees don't get to put their thumb on the scale. That is no different than what should happen in the elections in the state of Texas.
Okay, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I just want to say that, again, to the general public, know that election fraud is a nonpartisan issue. Election fraud hurts every one of us and is stealing from the future of our children, because if they will cheat to get somebody elected, they will also cheat to get their agenda items passed that increase our taxes and not always solve the problems that we actually really need to be solved, and don't focus on those basic services that need to be addressed that we all know happen. Again, thank you for your time.